It started with a lie, like most things, a small, insignificant untruth that grew legs, claws, and fangs before anyone knew it. His name was Jonathan Jacob, or at least that was one of the names. He had others, hundreds. To some he was Walter, to others Martin. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the promises he made to desperate people in the darkest hours of their lives. He promised them hope in the form of new life, and they believed him. They never questioned what lay behind his warm smile, or what monstrous thing hid behind his eyes. It was easy at first. A small controlled web of lies, simple exchanges, sperm in a cup, cash in his hand. But soon he realized he could do more. He wanted more. The idea of creation, of being the origin of so many lives, was intoxicating. He could picture it. Hundreds of little pieces of him, scattered across the world like seeds in the wind. A legacy stretching far beyond mortality, but it didn't stop at hundreds. No, Jonathan had ambition. He wanted thousands. The women never knew. How could they? To them, he was just the kind donor, there to help them in their time of need. A savior. He smiled at them, shared stories of his travels, his fake careers, but every time he handed over that plastic cup, he felt a thrill, a rush knowing that he had deceived yet another soul. Years passed, and Jonathan's children began to grow. Hundreds of half-brothers and sisters walking the earth unaware of one another. What haunted him wasn't the act itself, it was the silence that followed. They were out there, living, breathing, existing because of him. But he didn't know them, couldn't touch them. Then something changed. The first letter came in the dead of night, slid under his door with no return address. "I know what you've done." That's all it said. He brushed it off, his paranoia fleeting. But the next letter came the following week, then another and another. Each note grew more personal, more intimate. Whoever was sending them knew details. They mentioned his aliases, the women he'd lied to, the clinics he'd been banned from. And then the names started appearing. The names of his children. Real names. Faces that Jonathan had only imagined in his fantasies were being conjured in sickening detail. Their birthdays, their locations. Each letter contained a photograph, the child's eyes fixed on the camera, staring straight into his soul. Jonathan burned the letters, but they wouldn't stop. One night he awoke to the sound of children laughing. The sound echoed through his empty apartment, high-pitched giggles that crawled under his skin. When he checked the hallway, no one was there. But the next morning, his door was smeared with handprints, tiny, sticky, childlike handprints. They began to follow him. Every street corner, every store window, he could feel their eyes. He'd catch glimpses in reflections, children standing too still, their eyes too familiar. One night he swore he saw a child that looked exactly like him, just a younger, smaller version, watching him from across the street. He tried to run. He moved to a different country, changed his name again, but they found him. The children always found him. The final letter arrived on a cold autumn night. It was different this time. No threats, no accusations. Just a single sheet of paper with a list of names. All of them. Every child he'd fathered. At the bottom, scrawled in a child's handwriting, were the words, "We're coming home, Daddy." That night, Jonathan didn't sleep. He couldn't. The next morning, the knocking began. Soft at first, but relentless. It started at the front door, but soon it echoed from the walls, the ceiling, the floors. His entire apartment seemed to pulse with the sound, as though every surface had become a door, and behind each one they waited. The knocking hasn't stopped, and neither has their laughter. Jonathan knows it won't be long now. After all, they've already found him.